Hello, everybody. It's me, Producer Ross, and welcome to another edition of my ITFC. And it's a pleasure to be joined by good old Nick. How you doing, my friend, during these weird and strange times we've been living in?
I'm getting by, Ross, like the rest of us, hopefully. But looking forward to the light at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely. And, you're a journalist, so you've been able to go to games without fans. Of course, before we get into the first question, of course, you are a Town fan and you wrote a very good article. So how did that sort of come about, really, in terms, as a big talking point when it went out, and a lot of fans were talking about it. But what was your thinking when you went into that? Did you just sort of go, I want to write an article about my club with, the current state of affairs and stuff?
Well, I have to pick my moments quite carefully to write about Town because, sadly, in League One, you're not at top of the news agenda. But I guess I hadn't done for a year or two, and then I felt, and this won't be a new sentiment to anyone watching or listening, I'm sure, but I felt that it is at such a tipping point now and such an existential moment in the club's history. And I was watching and I followed the game against Charlton, and there was a lot of reaction afterwards as well to, the running results, the club's position, the club's maybe dealings with certain sections of the local media, that kind of thing. And I thought, I've never experienced an atmosphere like this, and it's happening at a time when Town have to go up this year. They have to go up. Like it's just such a, I keep saying the word existential, but it is. I think it's got a massive bearing this season. How a Town can bounce out of that post-COVID, out of that COVID era into the post-COVID era, and somehow get out of the mess they're in, basically. So that's a long answer. In short, it was prompted by that. And I just wanted, again, I don't really think the piece said anything new, again, to this audience, definitely, but I kind of wanted to précis a lot of what was going on for a wider audience too. And I think it has had that impact and had quite a lot of interest. Like I don't think for one moment that people are going to listen to it in the corridors of power or something like that. But I wanted to get the situation and the knife edge that the club is on now out there more widely. I was born in Ipswich. I grew up just off Henley Road in North Ipswich. Went to Dale Hall Primary School. I first got into football through Italia 90, which I guess most people in their sort of mid-late 30s-ish did. And I remember my first live football match that I remember watching. I was 7. It was Spain v Yugoslavia on the afternoon when England beat Belgium with that David Platt volley in injury time. But anyway, so I got hooked on Italia 90 and went back to school for the next school year, and they'd got some sort of deal at Dale Hall School with like Town, where kids could go along to a selection of games for I don't know what it was back then, a quid, 2 quid or something. So my parents got a hold of it and were like, well, yeah, let's take him along to a couple, and that's kind of escalated since, really. My first game, and I've just looked up what the exact date was. It was on the 17th of November 1990. It was a goalless draw with Notts County. It was really grim. I can even remember that now. I was 7 years old, and I remember being sat in it was then the Portman lower, now the Cobbold lower, below where the away fans now are, and it was mixed back then. It was like the family enclosure, and I remember it absolutely lashing it down with rain. And I think my dad hadn't come prepared with a brolly either or something like that. And these 2 friendly Notts County fans basically kept me under their brolly for 90 minutes. So luckily we didn't score a goal to rub in their face after that. I just remember there was a big goalmouth scramble at some point in the game, and I'd never seen anything like that before because I'd hardly seen any football before. And I remember going up to my teacher in the playground that Monday and trying to tell her about it, and she was like, "What?" Because it wasn't really very interesting. And anyway, I started going to more and more games after that. My second game was actually on my 8th birthday. There was 8 goals. It was a 4-4 draw with Charlton. Which was, I still remember that, fantastic. I think Neil Thompson scored the first goal in that game, I think, which would mean he scored the first Town goal I saw. Might be wrong. obviously we went up the next year, 91, 92. I'd started going to more and more games, so I saw a lot of that season. And then we got a season tickets in 92, 93 for that first new Premier League campaign. So I was up there in Block M in the Britannia stand, Pioneer stand as was, and I've had a season ticket ever since. I'm in the North stand now, and in the last sort of decade or so, often only get to 5 or 6 games a season because my day job is to report on football, which is normally elsewhere. But you know, it's like having a limb, isn't it? You kind of, you know, you want to keep hold of it. So yeah, not going to be losing it, and losing it anytime soon, I think, even despite the current situation the club's in. I mean, so many people at my age would say Lucio Tirico, and I would probably say that too. I would say he just about shades it. I remember how gutted I was the morning after he left, or it came out he left. I remember coming into school. I could just sort of barely say a word all day. But he I don't think you could get many situations now where a player comes in from Argentina and sort of tanks in their first season, really, or at least takes a long time to adapt and is almost sidelined by the manager, but then bounces back to the extent he did. And he took the club to heart as well, didn't he? Like he toured the Sheffield United, and you know, was so instrumental to those playoff campaigns, or a couple of them under Burley. Was a fantastically technically gifted player, tenacious, play on either side. Scored an incredible goal, didn't he, where he ran down that right touchline against Crystal Palace and lashed it in off the bar. The Manchester United goal, people remember, going against Chelsea in the League Cup as well. And I just think he had that bit of, okay, for a younger kid, exoticness, for want of a better word than that, but excitement and novelty, and just the feeling that he could do all kinds of different things that you hadn't seen before from fullback. So loved him. And then, I mean, there's not too many from after 2000 really, but I mean, I can speak about a lot of the ones that many will share. Marcus Stewart, Martin Oyster, obviously, just for his sort of almost old world maverick style that was a bit rough around the edges, but just so classy as well. I loved, and also David Johnson, I think, doesn't often get enough of a mention, but I'd put him in my top 2 or 3 because I think signing him at a time when Town were playing in front of 7,000 or 8,000 fans against Stockport and things like that, and they couldn't buy a goal at the time. We didn't have a striker. Signed David Johnson from Bury, and he hit the ground running. And I think Town being the right club for the right player at the right time with that signing was kind of what pushed us on during the late 90s to eventually gather ourselves and push for a promotion in 2000. I mean, the ones that you'll never forget are the quite obvious ones, again, for that era. Bolton away and at home in the playoffs. I think that away game was really special, actually, because we went 2 down. Players went off injured, and you thought, here we go again. There's no way out of this. And then, I mean, we might come to favourite goal, but so I won't say too much. But then Marcus Stewart lashes in, and after that, it kind of all feels possible again. Then you remember being on the pitch after the 5-3 home game, and like someone jumping on your shoulders at the end, and it's one of your teachers, you know, and you're like, you know, fantastic stuff. And then, you know, always remember that 4-3 at Selhurst Park as well, when Palace equalised towards the end with, I think, a bad penalty given away by Tommy Miller, and then Miller clipping it over the top and Cucci lobbing it in the 90th minute. That was one of the most special of many different away days, just for the sheer drama and fun of it.
If we're going to go into the goal then, your favourite Town goal, you've brought it up already. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I think it's both of them actually, and it's always such an interesting debate about that game at Bolton, which was your favourite goal, and people seem fairly split about it. But I don't know. I would say Marcus's first goal, you know, and it was a bit of a slash maybe from range, but if he doesn't put that in, then everything changes. I do think that absolutely everything changes. So that as a moment when you thought, hang on, we might just have this now, was absolutely priceless. But then the equaliser, like, I don't know about you, but every single time I watch that goal, and I must have watched it hundreds of times since, each time I think, what are you doing checking back? What are you doing? He's going to take it off. I mean, it's one of those where you can't quite relax watching it ever. But to have that call and that chutzpah and that poise at a moment like that in a game, to just do it totally on your terms, in your own time zone, check back, bend it in the corner. I was in that away stand a few rows up, right level with him, and honestly, the journey back, we were all floating back to Ipswich. It was just fantastic. So, again, probably not the most original choices, but just stuff that, you know, is imprinted on you.
Now let's get into kits then. I'll be interested to hear what your first kit was, and then as a whole, your favourite kit.
My first kit, my first actual football kit someone inexplicably gave me was that Liverpool candy one with the sort of white V's on it. But my first town kit was it would have been the one that we got promoted in 91, 92, which was, you know, fairly solid blue effort. Favourite one will be the season after that, with the laces in 92, 93, which I just always think of Johnny Wart wearing that. And I know a few clubs tried it at the time. It was one of those fashions. I think Villa had it. Maybe Man United had it, actually. Possibly Sheffield Wednesday. But, you know, it was a funny idea looking back and quite weird. But, you know, that kind of really, just to look at that shirt again, it again captures a time for me. I'm also going to say that the 95-96 kit, the spray paint one, gets a lot of stick. It gets a lot of stick. But I quite like it, and I quite liked it at the time. Again, it was sort of naff 90s, you know, and at the same time as global hypercolor t-shirts and stuff like that. And yeah, I've still got a certain degree of fondness for that. Also loved the orange away shirts. You know, it always felt, and it's hard to put into words really, but it always felt quite exciting going somewhere like West Brom on a Tuesday night away game and Town come out in their bright orange. You know, like there was just something slightly dramatic about it. So that'd be my top 3 or 4 kits, I think. I quite like the current one too.
Yeah, I was about to ask. Yeah, what do you think of this year?
I like it. I think it's great to have Chaos Trust on the front, great to have NHS on the back. Wasn't so fond of the previous incarnation last year, but I think the club's done a great job with it this year, actually. I guess one of my most cringy memories is sitting at my parents' dinner table after we'd, I think, beaten Everton 2-1 away at Goodison Park in the relegation season 2001-2. I think that got us up to like 9th or 10th, because we'd kind of had that recovery, hadn't we, after the start of that season. And I remember the conversation. I remember going, well, at least we're not getting relegated now. At least we'll be all right. Maybe we can still look to get into Europe again. I don't think we won another game until that Middlesbrough game towards the end of the season. So. Yeah, that's not a great memory thinking back of that. Luckily, by the end of that season, I'd actually gone away on my gap year, so I didn't experience the relegation. I think the most desolate I've been in a stadium was the first set of Bolton playoff games the year before, when Kieran got his header, stuff like that. And I remember, like, at the end, like, being in tears in the stadium there and thinking, oh goodness, not again. And one that might not get mentioned so much, Rotherham away in 2000. It was the first season back down after we got relegated, and we were a goal up and looking pretty good to get back into the playoff zone right towards the end of the season. And then Mark Robbins got a goal in the 90th minute. I think they got 2 in the last 3 or 4 minutes, and that basically knackered us. We would have probably made the playoffs if it hadn't been for that. So I remember that was an awful journey back. Yeah, those are probably the sort of obvious low points I can think of. But then the time at the moment is a low point to be a Town fan as well, to be honest, because while you try and stay chipper and try and stay optimistic. It is a situation where, as I said at the top, you're trying to see a way out of, and you're not sure if you can. so I think a lot of these games I'm watching now and I follow, like Hull and Charlton, both low points in recent weeks that are, it's not gone much worse. The best list longer than the worst list. I mean, Wembley was great. We can all talk a lot about that. Obviously the playoff games, which we've spoken about, and I think that's because, again, if you're a teenager at that point as well, and you're quite impressionable and everything's so immediate and vivid, it's all tied up in your sense of self, that stuff, right? But if we're talking about in my adult life, maybe the first leg win over Arsenal, Thomas Priskin, the one where Fabregas said Town were a rugby team. I was actually, and this is going back a few years now, but I was working for Arsenal at the time on their club media team before I started doing what I'm now doing. So I was pumping going into that. I was like, all of my colleagues were like, oh, well, Arsenal fans are Arsenal players, to be honest, as well. And I remember taking my seat up in the North Stand, and when Priskin scored, I think that's up there with the craziest I've ever gone for a Town goal. I mean, obviously it didn't go quite so well at the Emirates, but that almost didn't matter to me. I'd had my moment. So yeah, that was a fantastic moment. Really, really was. And I loved, as a kid, I must have been 9, the final game of the 91-92 season, Brighton, when we won 3-1, and we were going up as champions and stuff like that, and just the whole carnival atmosphere of that really stayed with me. And also the Liverpool home cup tie that year, actually 0-0, terrible wins, but again, you just think, wow, this is so cool.
Now, before we actually finish this chat, I want to ask you about your job itself. How did you sort of get into journalism, and what would you say is some of the best games you've covered in your career so far? So far,
yeah. Well, I'm doing Dundalk v Arsenal off the TV later, and I can tell you that won't be one of the best. So, long story short, it's been quite an orthodox journey in some ways. I actually I started kind of actually at the EADT in Star. I did some work experience there when I was in sixth form. Then the then head of sport, Nick Ames, kindly let me in one of my university summer holidays to cover the local tennis scene for a summer, which was fantastic fun, going to these tournaments in like Finton and Southwold. There might have been Felixstowe, Birmingham. There's a big circuit. So I did that. Moved down to London, started working at a news agency. Worked for Arsenal Football Club for those few years, as I told you, and then I left and went freelance for a while. This would have been in around 2013, and luckily I had a few contacts at The Guardian, where I work now, and kind of got more and more involved there while still working for a few other people. And now I'm just a Guardian employee. So it's kind of gone from there. In terms of best games I ever covered and watched, I mean, I've been lucky to do quite a lot of good European games. I did the World Cup in 2018 in Russia, which was fantastic. Being at the final was a great experience. A few England World Cup games were great as well. I covered England v Iceland in Nice in 2016, which was, just for the whole occasion of that, was incredible. And then there've been some slightly more offbeat games as well that I won't forget, such as Serbia against Albania in 2000 and what year was it now? 14, when, I don't know whether you remember, a drone came down on the pitch and the game got abandoned. And I just happened to be at that game, actually. I was freelance at the time, and I went as a punt in case there was a story. And there was a hell of a story. It all hell broke loose there. So that was great. So it's been quite a good mix of, your week-to-week Premier League games, and then a few, more special international events. But I do still, every time there's a spare Saturday, I get myself to Portman Road and keep watching my Town.
Have you experienced, having to cover town games or like having to interview managers or players? That must have been great for you if you have had an opportunity to do that. And you're a town fan. You take your town fan hat off, of course, and then you got to be, you go into your job. But it must be a real moment, I think, when you're a kid. Like, I never thought I'd do this, and now I'm actually speaking to the players and managers.
I've covered 3 Town v Norwich games. Actually 4. 3 at Portman Road, 1 the terrible 3-0 one at Carrow Road 2 years ago. And I would say that they're the proudest moments of my career. Totally, just to be, I remember the first one, just being up there a couple of hours before the game, sat in the press box and just sort of looking over to the seat which I sat in as a kid, thinking, well, you used to, look over there and think, what are they doing? And now you're there on the other side of it. So no, nothing is actually, we can talk about World Cups and stuff, but nothing has topped that for me, actually. I've done a few things down there. I remember doing a nice interview with Bart before he went to a World Cup with Poland, Bartosz Białkowski. Spent a long time in Paul Lambert's office, did an interview with him shortly after he joined, the week before that Norwich game, actually, when I think he got sent off from a touchline at Carrow Road, didn't he? And that was, I look back now, and Lambert was such an impressive interviewee as well. Like, I came out of that room and I couldn't tell whether Ipswich were top and Norwich bottom or the other way around. He really sold it to me, and it's I don't know how it has gone since then is a shame, but that is how it has gone. I think I do think he had a sort of vision for what he would like to do, but maybe has he been unable to execute it? Has he got it in himself to execute it? Not sure.
Yeah. Well, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.